Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025 1063 The Game and The Game Nashville app. Happy Monday on this Martin Luther King Day Monday, an awfully snowy and cold day at that. So hope everyone is staying warm and staying safe. If you can avoid being on the roads, I highly, highly recommend doing so. I was driving home late from the airport last night and the conditions were horrible. I saw a bunch of cars spinning, cars that were just sitting on an exit ramp. It was scary conditions last night. So I hope that everyone can stay safe and stay warm. But D-Mase and I are working from home today. We are on remote just to stay off of the roads
Uh-huh.
and stay in the comfort of our warm homes. But Nick Frazier, our producer, was brave enough and dedicated enough to the show that he made his way into the station to make sure that we could get connected to you. Nick, what were the roads like this morning?
I mean, they were all right. I could definitely tell that it was just patted down snow and not really ice for the most part just yet. But I'm pretty sure with this second wave of snow flurries, it's going to for sure ice a lot of things and throw a lot of stuff. There's a party in here if you couldn't hear in the background. But yeah, we got a handful of people in here. But yeah,
Snow party.
it was interesting to see the roads. But if you know how to drive and this type of stuff, I think it'll be all right. Just go slow, about 20, 25 miles an hour.
Well, kids, get out, have fun, enjoy it. Metro, I think, have closed their schools tomorrow already. So get out, have fun for the next 2 days, enjoy this snow. Drink a lot of hot cocoa.
Go sledding, build a snowman. I will not be doing that. I will not be walking outside until all of the snow is gone, since I am such a sissy when it comes to the snow. But enjoy it. Enjoy it while it's here because we don't get it too often. So stay safe, everyone. Stay warm. D-Mase is here. Willy will join us later on the show. Willy is in Vegas. A little bit of a funky schedule today with the Predators. They take on the Vegas Golden Knights on the road. Puck drop at 5 o'clock. And of course, we'll have all of your pre-game coverage starting right here at 4 p.m. on 1025 and 1063 The Game. We'll get into the Predators. Their big weekend this past weekend. 2 wins, 2 important wins, 2 very important games, and they look pretty darn good while doing it. So we'll chat and catch up with Willy Donick toward the end of the show. But D-Mase, we have to get into wild card weekend.
Oh,
We
my
have
goodness.
to get into, I mean, really 4 great, great games over the weekend. We saw the Texans
Mhm.
trounce the Cleveland Browns, Kansas City, and Miami in an absolute snow globe tundra. The Chiefs get it done. Green Bay with a huge win over the Dallas Cowboys, and we will get into all of that. And of course, a great game last night in Detroit. Lions hit their first playoff victory in 32 years. It's the first time in my lifetime that I've ever seen the Detroit Lions win a playoff game. Wild.
Well, I've seen them when they went to the NFC Championship game in the late 90s. And they ultimately, I think they end up losing to, was it San Fran or Green Bay? One of those teams. But that was the last time they actually won consecutive games in the playoffs. So hopefully, the people of Detroit, man, they got a lot to cheer for right now because that team played excellent last night.
It was a great game. And I am always reluctant to feel bad for a certain fan base.
Mhm.
Like, I don't feel bad for Dallas today, but I feel for the people of Detroit, for Lions fans that are so
Mhm.
passionate about that team and that franchise, and it has just been misery for so many years. So I'm happy for Lions fans and happy for the city of Detroit. I want to break down all of these games, some of our biggest takeaways. But D-Mase, watching the games this weekend, what do you think was maybe the biggest surprises? What shocked you, maybe impressed you, disappointed you the most from this weekend of wildcard games?
Well, what shocked me was the way Cleveland's defense played. You're talking about a top, five defense in the league in just about every major statistical category, and they looked like a shell of themselves. They looked like they were not even ready to play in the playoffs. This Cleveland Brown defense that surprised me. It surprised me too how Houston was able to dominate a young team, first year head coach, getting to the playoffs. They hadn't had a playoff game in their building in quite a while as well. But the way that CJ Stroud showed up big, that truly impressed me. But I think the biggest was, and I think everybody realizes this, is the Dallas Cowboys. They just laid a goose egg, a fat goose egg yesterday. And you can't sit back and say that you can continue with Mike McCarthy as your head coach. You can't, because this team from top to bottom. Now, I know they missed Diggs throughout the season, their shutdown corner, but they still have a very good defense with Lawrence and Parsons and Bland, who has what, 5 or 6 interceptions, and then he has like 3 or 4 interceptions for touchdowns. So this defense and offense, for that fact, because they were the best offense in the National Football League, especially when they were at home. The way they didn't show up was a huge surprise. And I don't know how you can move forward with Mike McCarthy as a quarterback. I even heard people saying, as a head coach,
Yeah.
but I even heard people saying you got to move away from Dak Prescott. I don't think that's the case, because the common denominator in all of this is Mike McCarthy. I think you may have to get a new coaching change because they have the talent. Now they got to re-sign some of that talent back. Parsons is going to want a new contract. Dak is up for a new contract. CeeDee Lamb is up for a new contract pretty soon here. So you got a lot of money, Jerry Jones, to spend. But this notion that you just clean house, as I saw this morning, Dan Orlovsky saying, well, you just got to clean house. How are you going to clean house? That's just asinine to me. You make a change at the head coaching position. I think Dak's a good quarterback. You got enough talent. You just need a new, fresh voice in the locker room, I believe.
And that you bring up Trayvon Diggs. That team was not a Trayvon Diggs away from winning that football game. That football game.
No,
that I cannot put it on not having Trayvon Diggs for the entirety of the season, and it should surprise me more than it does. But it just seems like the Cowboys do this every single year. You 12-5 and back-to-back seasons. You were the first place in your division, and really all season long, I watched that team and I thought, okay, I thought Mike McCarthy was kind of a dingus, to be honest with you. I didn't think he was a very good coach. The regular season showed me, okay, maybe Mike McCarthy's got some things figured out. Yet they choke again in the playoffs against a Packers team that I think is good, but I'm not really convinced is quite great. Yeah, and I'm not really quite convinced about Jordan Love, but I do want to get into the Cowboys, the Packers game, where the Cowboys go from there, how that could even affect Titans fans. But I do want to touch on the game that you brought up first, and that was the Browns and Texans game. We saw that Browns defense absolutely obliterate the Titans offense earlier this season. I mean, Myles Garrett, if he wanted to get after Ryan Tannehill, this was obviously pre-Ryan Tannehill injury. If he wanted to get right after Ryan Tannehill on every single snap, he probably could have. I mean, that Browns defensive front hasn't just attacked the Titans, but has attacked nearly every single team on their schedule all season long, where I felt like the Browns defense wasn't really much of a factor against the Texans. My question for you, D-Mase, I have several questions about the Texans and what we saw on Saturday. Was it the Browns defense not showing up? Was it the Browns defense maybe not having the right game plan? Or is it the Texans offensive line? They didn't get a single sack on CJ Stroud on Saturday.
No, they didn't. And if I can recall, this team, I'm trying to pull up Cleveland's schedule here, but they had played earlier in the season, if I recall, and they basically beat Houston down. And Amari Cooper had a huge day. I'm trying to look at the schedule. Yes, they beat him 36-22. Amari Cooper went off for 200 and some yards receiving. He had 265 with 2 touchdowns. Joe Flacco was lights out, even though in that game, Joe threw 2 interceptions in that game. But the defense played well. They were lights out on offense. It's hard to then turn back around 3 to 4 weeks later, play that team again, and put up the same numbers. I'm sure Houston went back and watched that tape and saw that it was more so them than actually Cleveland, that basically how that game ended. I think Cleveland didn't show up on defense. I think Houston made a lot of adjustments, and they kept the pocket clean. And it's hard to do that. Like you said, the last time we saw Cleveland against anybody, just about anybody during the year, especially here in Nashville, it was they can get to the quarterback when they wanted to.
Yep.
But for some reason, They couldn't do those things against the Houston Texans the second go around at their place. Again, CJ Stroud played lights out. Nico Collins played lights out. That defense had turnovers. I mean, they played inspired football, and their head coach is doing a wonderful job. No wonder, their offensive coordinator is up for head coaching jobs, because the way that Houston offense looked, man, oh man, they were on fire. Now they got to do it another week against a more balanced and maybe even better team in the Baltimore Ravens. That's assuming that if Cleveland, no, if Buffalo loses to Pittsburgh, Buffalo beats Pittsburgh, then they go to Cleveland. Houston comes to Baltimore, but if they lose, then obviously the Ravens play the Steelers next week.
So, I mean, that game had no business being as much of a blowout as it
No,
really
it
was.
didn't.
I mean, you mentioned two turnovers. I mean, Joe Flacco didn't have a good game. He turned the ball over twice. Houston was able to capitalize on both of those turnovers. But, I mean, it really wasn't even close, and Houston ran away with it early in the game. I mean, 45-14. Games in the NFL are not designed to be as much of a blowout as that was, especially in the playoffs. You don't see playoff games with that much of a wide margin. So I will ask you this, and this is something that I've been kind of going back and forth with, and something that I watched that game through the perspective of. Are the Texans a legitimate Super Bowl contender? Like, it sounds crazy to say that. But I saw them essentially let the Browns defense be a non-factor, or they forced the Browns defense into being a non-factor. That's the best defense in the National Football League.
Yes.
That is a championship caliber offense, at least that we saw on Saturday. Now, I don't know if Houston can be consistent enough. And if they do have to go to Baltimore, I don't know if they have the dogs to be able to keep up with Baltimore's defense. But could the Texans be a Super Bowl contender?
Could they? I mean, in theory, yeah. Are they? Oh man, it's I know how this game is. And, yes, you can get on the road, and yes, you can win some games. And yes, Houston may and can find themselves, representing the AFC, in the Super Bowl. But I just look at their season, and sometimes we get caught up in the last performance, whether it be good or bad. Look at how we're talking about Dallas and, their last performance. It was horrible. So now all of a sudden, now we think, or many believe that, Dallas is a bad team, get rid of Dak and all these other players, when in actuality it's not truly, that cut and dry. And I think Houston is the same way. We can't be sort of a prisoner of the moment in regards to them. This is a good team. It's a young team with a young head coach, a young quarterback, and some young talent. Can they find their way into the AFC Championship game? Absolutely. But the true test is for them is, you can do it at home, but can you do it on the road? They lost to teams like the Atlanta Falcons, who we know the Atlanta Falcons is not a good team. They lost to Jacksonville. They lost to the Jets, who couldn't score points that they tried to at times. And then obviously they lost to the Cleveland Browns. And then they lost to the Baltimore Ravens first game of the season this year. So can they find themselves in the AFC Championship game? Yes, but it's going to take consistency for them to put themselves in a position. And when you got to travel during the playoffs, and after another team has an opportunity to rest, that may be an uphill battle for the Houston Texans. But again, I'm not saying they can't do it, but man, oh man, it's going to be tough.
One of the most impressive things to me about this Texans team, of course, it's CJ Stroud. And how incredible he has been in his rookie season, the way that he goes out there, and it doesn't look like he's a rookie. It doesn't feel like he's making some of those rookie mistakes, or his first playoff game, and he played out of his freaking mind. Now, important, it was at home. It's different. On the road, it's a different story. But I think the most impressive thing outside of CJ Stroud to me is this Texans team has dealt with a lot of injuries. I mean, Tank Dell was a foundation of that offense. They lose him for the season. and he still put up 45 points against the best defense in the NFL. This offensive line for the Texans, they've experienced a lot of injuries. We talk about how the Titans' offensive line has been a revolving door. I mean, the Texans' offensive line has been a revolving door as well. It's been injury after injury, yet I've never felt like this offensive line has taken a step back. Devin Singletary, kind of he's bounced around from team to team. I've never viewed Devin Singletary as being one of those guys that can be a focal point of the run game or a focal point of an offense, that he can change the game. I don't think he's necessarily been the focal point of Houston's offense, but he's done a really solid job for the Houston Texans so far this season. So I think the most impressive thing to me is how Houston has been able to overcome injury, how Houston has been able to stay consistent even when personnel hasn't been consistent. Now, does that make you a Super Bowl contender? I can't quite go there with the Houston Texans. But let's say the Bills take care of business tonight against the Steelers, and the Texans find themselves on the road in Baltimore. That's not a game that I can pick the Texans to win. But if that's how Houston's season ends up, is a loss in the divisional round on the road against the number 1 seed in the AFC, I think you have to call that a resounding success for the Houston Texans in their season. And it can maybe give hope to some Titans fans that doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of hope out there. But yeah, the Texans were miserable for years, but in 2022, they were horrible. 2023, now they find themselves in the divisional round of the playoffs. I think that's a pretty impressive turnaround.
Yeah, it is pretty impressive. This team they're feeding off their young talent that they have. Whether it's Anderson on defense, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, CJ Stroud on offense. You got to remember Laramie Tunsil is still there as well. He's an anchor for that team on the offensive line. And then they're feeding off their young coach and their young offensive coordinator. So this Texan defense, well, this Texan team, is poised to do some really good things moving forward, not just in the playoffs, but I think even next season as they start to build even more talent and hone in on that talent. I think this Houston Texans is going to be a team that is going to be, in a position each and every year to not just make the playoffs, but make a run in the playoffs. But I think this year, for them, they're going to have to continue to improve. It's one thing, winning your first, playoff game as a rookie, and everybody's on cloud 9. But then how do you come back the next following week, knowing that the test is a little bit tougher, that you got to go to an unfamiliar place to play in the playoffs? How then do you react as a team? I know their coach is going to be steady, but how will your young players, how will they react if they're down 14-0 or 14-3? How do then they react as a team? So, but I mean, they got a lot of good players on that team, hell of a coaches on that team. And do I believe they will advance further in the playoffs? Maybe not, but I wouldn't be shocked.
I mean, CJ Stroud's legit.
Yeah,
this Texans team looks legit.
Yeah, CJ Stroud is it's not just what he was able to do in the playoffs. It's what he's been able to do all season. And then, matter of fact, what he was able to do the last game of his collegiate career against a Georgia team that was just, littered with first-round draft picks and 5-star guys. He carved that defense up. And if it hadn't been for Marvin Harrison Jr. getting hurt, I'm not sure Georgia would have won that game. So he's shown you that each opportunity he has had to play big in games, he's done just that. And he hasn't let his team down. And it's no different this past weekend. He did not let his team down, not one bit.
Is Jordan Love legit, though? Because I look at it and I say, you Packers fans, you spoiled little brats. It is unfair. That's not how the National Football League works. You don't go from one Hall of Fame quarterback to another Hall of Fame quarterback and then go to a quarterback that looks to be pretty promising, that looks to be pretty darn good. Now, I'm not willing to say that he's Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, but D-Mase, if Jordan Love stays on this trajectory, he very well could be the next in line of the third great quarterback in a row in Green Bay. Just it's not fair. Football doesn't work that way. But do you think that you've seen enough from him to say that, yeah, Jordan Love is legit? Jordan Love could, carry Green Bay to the promised land like their past two previous quarterbacks have.
Um, Listen, he hasn't shown me anything that's telling me opposite of what you're saying or contrary to what you're saying. To what you're saying. Caroline. I think him sitting for a few years, learning the offense, this LaFleur offense, watching, Aaron Rodgers, carve teams up, learning from Aaron Rodgers on things he can do and things he can't do, seeing the game from a different view when you're on the sidelines as opposed to being a guy in the huddle. I think I'm not going to sit here and say he's legit, but just like CJ Stroud, he's proven that, man, oh man, you get some players around him, you get him offensive line,
Yeah.
it's going to be hell to deal with him on Sundays or Mondays or Thursdays when you have to play. The kid's good. There's a reason why they drafted him, in the first round, knowing that they still had a Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers, because they knew eventually Aaron was going to be gone, and this was going to be the guy that ushered them into a new generation of Green Bay Packer football. And right now, he's had his ups and downs, but for the last 6 or 7 weeks of the season and the playoffs, he's probably been, if not the best quarterback, he's been a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the National Football League.
We always have this philosophical conversation of sit the quarterback, play the quarterback. Do you bring in the young quarterback and allow him time to sit on the bench, to learn, to develop, to mature, to feel like he has a good grasp of his offense before we throw it out to the Wolves? Or on the other side, it's got to throw him in there. He's got to get experience. He's not going to learn how to play this game on the bench. I think we could be looking at Jordan Love and his development, and that's a pretty darn strong argument for the sit the quarterback crowd. That we saw Jordan Love a couple seasons ago, and he struggled. It looked brutal. That decision to draft him in the first round of the 2020 draft looked like a bad one. It looked like, times might be tough in Green Bay. Had Jordan Love eventually taken over as the starter. Now here you are, fast forward to this season, and he had that kind of performance against that Cowboys defense. I think it shows that just give him some time. Allow him some time to develop. Allow him some time on the bench, and have a little bit more patience when it comes to the quarterback. But Green Bay, massive win over the Dallas Cowboys. D-Mase brought it up earlier. Could Mike McCarthy be on the outs? I think it's very likely that we could see some news coming out of Dallas, coming out of Jerry's World here in just a few hours, that Mike McCarthy is no longer the head coach in Dallas. Is that the right decision? Is there a scenario in which Mike McCarthy still is the head coach in Dallas next year? And if not, could there be a familiar face that fills in that head coaching spot in Dallas? We'll get into that coming up next. And of course, we will get into your phones. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Also, just a little bit of news here coming up from Jeremy Fowler. The Jags are expected to interview Shane Bowen for their open DC job. So interesting developments there on the coaching front. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we are brought to you by Zen Sports. We love our friends over at Zen Sports. They support our program, and we believe wholeheartedly in them. So start earning your cash rewards on your bets today with Zen Sports. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Been asking the question all year, why is this Cowboys team any different? And they showed us that instead of losing the divisional round, they didn't get to the divisional round. That's different. This one hits different as well. We have, before the game, Jimmy Johnson saying he thinks it's the best Cowboys team since the 90s. He said that. You have Jerry Jones after the game saying it's his biggest disappointment since he got involved in sports. The reason this really hits different is the question of, if not now, when? Let's just look at the facts. The Cowboys say, we are home, we are healthy, and we didn't get beat, we got destroyed. We are loaded. Star quarterback, star wide receiver, star passer, veteran coach, great defense, great O-line, historic kicker. And we didn't lose, we got destroyed. We are playing a neophyte playoff quarterback, a team of children, and without one single Pro Bowler. And we didn't lose, we got destroyed. I try to do this thing where I'm like, I don't want to talk about the Cowboys. And it's not shtick. I don't want to talk about them to the playoffs because that's all I need to see. The Cowboys at this point have a quality of a new religion. And I'm talking about not a traditional one, a newfangled, modern, manufactured religion in which people buy in and they devote their time and their attention to this alleged light and truth. And in the middle of it is a charismatic Southern preacher man, and he always has big plans for promises and a glorious salvation. And there's these old stories of the past and these mythical figures, and there's symbols and there's stars, and there's this mega church edifice that they play in, and there's money being pumped into it, and money. But what's missing is something called validation of faith. Give us something. Show us why to believe. Validate our belief. Show us a miracle. Validate us. They're a false prophet. They're not real. How about them Cowboys? What about them? What? It comes back to the same question it has for a quarter century. WWJD, what will Jerry do, and do we even care? It's a fake manufactured religion that we blindly buy into and that never pays off at the end. And I wish more people would start opening their eyes and seeing the real light, because it doesn't exist.
One of my favorite things about that clip is at the very end, you can hear someone going, ooh. That was Kyle Brandt on Good Morning Football this morning. And look, I think we all feel that way about the Dallas Cowboys. And yet another epic choke job in the postseason from a Dallas Cowboys team. That's exactly what it is. And I agree wholeheartedly with what Kyle Brandt said there. There is simply no excuse for this to be a trend with the Cowboys. That you've got a quarterback that I think is good, not great, not an elite quarterback by any means, but you've got a solid quarterback that you've invested money into your pass catchers, that you've invested money into your defensive front, that Micah Parsons could just be one of the more menacing defensive players in the National Football League, that you have stars. You have so many stars littered across that roster. You're at home. You're the number one seed. You win your division against a Green Bay team and a quarterback that we just asked, is he legit? We're really not quite sure. That Green Bay Packers team doesn't have any stars on it. That if you would ask an average football fan, an average NFL fan, can you name 3 players on the Green Bay Packers? They might not be able to. That there is really no excuse for the Cowboys to be losing as many playoff games as they have in the fashion that they have. Yet, D-Mase, it's hard to not be surprised. It's hard not to say, well, Cowboy's gonna cowboy.
Well, you know what? I mean, Dallas do Dallas things. I love what Kyle Brandt said. I mean, I couldn't have said it, and I don't think anyone else could have said it any better. He was eloquent in what he said. He was dead on, spot on. Dallas and Jerry Jones is like a mega church that is preaching, but not giving you anything to hold on to. No faith whatsoever. They're just asking you for money. They're telling you what's going to happen, but you never see any fruits of your labor. You never see any fruits of your dollars that you're putting into that the collection pot, or you're putting into that stadium. You don't, as Cowboy fans, you don't see anything. But here's the thing. Cowboy fans are crazy. They're
crazy.
Delirious, because he's going to say the same thing again next year, and Cowboy fans are going to believe him once again. And then at the end, there's not going to be any fruit of the labor. There's not going to be anything tangible that they can hold on to, and they're going to be right back in the same situation they're in today. Disappointed, their heads in the pillow, don't want to talk to anyone, blocking everyone, getting off social media, burning jerseys, claiming that they will never watch football ever in their life. Those are Dallas fans. They're used to it. Come next fall, Dallas fans will be saying the same thing they have said since they won their last championship. This is our year. And it's just ridiculous. You know what? Jerry Jones is the best businessman on the planet Earth. He is. He is the best business. I think he has something to do with inventing bread. I really do. Because when it get cold like this, everybody want to run out and get bread. I think Jerry Jones has something to do with that.
Bread and milk. Whoever's
exactly,
doing PR for bread and milk on a snowy day
exactly.
deserves a raise.
He gets people to believe this every year, and people buy in, and the Dallas Cowboys starts off like gangbusters. They've had 3 straight 12-winning seasons. 3 straight. And then once they get in the playoffs, you know how many games they've won? 1. It was a stat that I think Shannon Sharp brought it up on ESPN. He said the Green Bay Packers won more games in A&T than the Cowboys won in A&T Stadium in the playoffs. Think about that. The Green Bay Packers have won more games in your building than you have. But yet and still, Cowboy fans next year, Chase, Suit, will believe
Listening,
that
Chase?
Dallas, exactly, will believe that this is Dallas's year, and Jerry Jones will talk them into it again. That's why I said Jerry Jones is the best businessman on earth.
Cowboy fans are victims of a toxic relationship, of this toxic cycle that, if something goes wrong and then you constantly are promised, but I'll be different. Things will change. I'll get better. I'll learn. I'll be better for
I
you.
go to counseling. I do this.
I'm in counseling right
I'm
now.
sorry.
I'm listening to you guys. I'm in counseling right now. And I'm always listening.
Chase, how do you feel today?
I'm not surprised. I mean, like, everything that you all are saying is spot on. And what Derek just said, I mean, it's the life of a Cowboys fan. Like, I watched that game yesterday and I was miserable and I was like, how is this happening? But at the same time, I wasn't surprised. I was just like,
but that's the thing, is you should be surprised. A team that was 12-5 and won their division and has as many good players as they have. When you have CD Lamb with the performance that he had on Sunday, you should be surprised that they lost that game to a Packers team that I don't know. I don't think they're an elite team. I don't think they're a great team. I think they're a solid team. You should be surprised, but you aren't surprised because they do this every single freaking year. Like, something has got to give with the Dallas
Hey, Caroline,
Cowboys.
and they have 3 All-Pros on that offensive line. Not 1, not 2, but 3 All-Pros on that offensive line. And they look like the Titans yesterday.
They had 3 more Pro Bowlers on that offensive line than the Packers have on their entire team.
Derek, what is your honest assessment of Dak Prescott as a quarterback?
You know what, Dak? Here's the deal with Dak. I think Dak he's the second tier quarterback, and I say he's a second tier quarterback because he plays elite at times, and then he plays like an average quarterback. So if you want to equal that out, he's a really good quarterback, but for some reason he gets in these games, and not just regular season games. I'm talking about playoff games where it really means something. He gets in these playoff games and he struggles. He and CD Lamb looked as if they were off yesterday early on. I don't know what was going on with CD. I don't know what was going on. And then Mike McCarthy, his play calling, it was just like, dude, do what you usually do. Open it up. Throw to CD Lamb. Get the ball into the hands of your playmakers. And for some reason, for the first quarter and a half, they were not doing that. It just seemed like something was off. But I think Dak is a really good quarterback. He's not elite because he doesn't play at an elite level enough. He may play at an elite level 5 or 6 games out of the year. But then after that, he comes back down to earth. There's a reason why he was in the running for MVP
Yeah.
because of the way he played in that, like the last, 7 or 8 games of the season. But he get into the playoffs and he plays nothing like he did the previous games before entering the playoffs.
I think that's a good assessment for sure. So, yes, I'm a depressed Cowboys fan today, and I appreciate the therapy session. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll let you get back to it, but I just had to chime in.
Suit, you are always welcome on the program. Stay warm out there.
Absolutely.
That game yesterday, Jared very early in my tenure with him introduced me to the phrase of that's the kind of game that gets a coach fired. That's the kind of game that gets somebody fired. That is exactly how I stepped away from that Cowboys-Packers game yesterday was that's the kind of game that gets somebody fired. And it feels probably more likely than not that that's going to be Mike McCarthy. That you cannot have as epic of a choke job and have as good of a regular season and as disastrous of a single playoff game without moving on from the head coach. Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, you're not wrong in thinking that. It's not that, again, it's not that Dallas lost. Because, hey, listen, sometimes you get in the playoffs and teams are, they may win on a fluke, like on the last second field goal, or, you may have a sort of quirky play that happened, or the game's going back and forth. It's just like, okay, whoever has the ball last, ends up winning the game. Games like that happen. If Dallas loses in that fashion, then okay. But they got beat down. They got took behind the woodshed and spanked over and over and over and over again. It was embarrassing. The minute they got down 14-0, I said, oh, here we go again. Dallas is Dallasing all over again. And it just seemed like they had the momentum going. They score once, and then the defense couldn't stop Green Bay. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. They couldn't stop they couldn't stop me if I was out there playing. That's how bad.
D-Mase.
That's how bad that defense was yesterday. And it's like you said, it's one of these games that ultimately gets your head coach fired. I'm not saying Mike McCarthy is a horrible coach because he's not. He's a good coach. But when you enter into the playoffs on this high, you got a home game, first playoff game, and at home, your first playoff game at home, and you come out in that fashion and play the way you played, then yes, that does warrant possibly a change at the head coaching position because there's no way Dallas should have came out and played the way it did.
I mean, there are 4 things that I'm certain of in this world: death, taxes, Rick Barnes choking in March, the Cowboys choking in the playoffs. And I'm with you.
UT fans are gonna hate you now. They're like, "Why are you even bringing us in this?"
I mean, that was my exact thought was Cowboys gonna Cowboy, Barnes gonna Barnes. Certain things in sports that are simply inexplicable, yet you know they're going to happen. That's one of those things. So I'm with you. I think Mike McCarthy. I think that it's gonna be, if it's not today, if it's not tomorrow, we're going to hear the news of Jerry Jones moving on from Mike McCarthy. But I saw this from our friend John Glennon.
Mm-hmm.
Odds of the next Cowboys head coach, if it's not Mike McCarthy. Now, Bill Belichick has the best odds to be the Cowboys' next head coach, and that feels like such a Jerry Jones thing, doesn't it? To bring in Bill Belichick. Second best odds to serve as the Cowboys' next head coach. 3-1 odds. Mike Vrabel.
I was thinking that this morning, when I was listening to a few shows and they were, on television, they were talking about, well, Bill Belichick needs to be the head coach for the next Dallas Cowboy head coach. And I'm thinking it wouldn't be a bad fit, but how much control does Bill want? And we know that Jerry doesn't do well with big personalities. Not to say that Bill Belichick has this huge personality, but what he does have is something that Jerry Jones don't. 7 Super Bowls. I believe it's 6 or 7. That's something Jerry Jones don't have. So that immediately when you hire Bill Belichick, it becomes Bill's team, not Jerry's team anymore. And maybe, just maybe, Jerry can't handle that. But then again, he may be thinking, man, I don't have many years left on this earth. So, I can deal with a Bill Belichick for a few years as long as it brings me a championship. But I do believe that Mike Vrabel is the best candidate for that situation. Again, he needed to move on from here, but him moving on from here doesn't make me think that he's a bad coach. I've always said I think Mike's a good coach, but his time is just run thin here. He needs to move on. They need a new face. I think if he goes to Dallas, one, he will get that locker room discipline. He will get those guys playing, 100%, no matter what. And I think he'll beef up that defensive line. And that's the Dallas Cowboys. One of their problems is they're lighting the ass. That's what they are, basically. Yeah. They like to rush the passer, but they cannot stop the run. And in the playoffs, you need to have some brothers with some beef in the middle of that defense that can stop the run. And right now, they don't have it. I like Lawrence. I love Micah Parsons, but those ain't run stoppers. They need run stoppers in the middle of that defense. And Mike Vrabel, I think, would be the type of guy that can come in there and rework a lot of things, not dismantle the personnel or the roster, but come in there and establish a toughness, not a facade, but a toughness that the Dallas Cowboys will need next season and beyond.
I think Mike Vrabel would absolutely hate that job. I think that Mike Vrabel having to deal with Jerry Jones. And I mean, we talk about the relationship between Mike Vrabel and Amy Adams Strunk, and Mike Vrabel wanting total
control. But it's a team ready to win, Caroline.
But when you talk about meddling owners, who's the first face that pops up in your mind? It's Jerry Jones. I think he would drive Mike Vrabel absolutely insane. But it's the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. It has to be an attractive job. Not only is it the Dallas Cowboys, not only do you have all the the money in the world, we've also got a team that looks pretty prepped and ready to make a run for the Super Bowl if you just don't choke in the playoffs. But I want to get your thoughts on that coming up next. Could Mike Vrabel be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys? Plus your takeaways, your thoughts, your the biggest surprises to you from Wildcard Weekend. We'll get into your phones coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round.
Happy Monday, everyone. I know you saw the games this weekend, and if you're a Dallas fan, then good Lord, I feel for you. But if you did all your betting, I know you did it with our partners in sports. And I'm excited to tell you about their new introductory promotion available to all new customers in Tennessee. It's the No Danger First Wager, okay? So when you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000 No Danger First Wager when you place your first bet on Zen Sports. You will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses, Dallas fans, up to $1,000. Plus, Zen Sports has launched a new VIP program for the premier bettors of Tennessee. If you think you might qualify, then listen up. The VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sportsbook will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports, people. So what are you waiting for? Get going and download their app at zensports.com. today. We got a game coming on tonight, so do it today. Matter of fact, we got two of them because the Buffalo game got canceled yesterday and moved to tonight. So we got two. So you got a chance to do it on Zen Sports, which makes betting just got better with Zen Sports, okay? But remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and the Game Nashville app. TD, Teron Davenport will join us in 1 hour. Now, we have not been able to talk to TD since Mike Vrabel got fired. So, everything that's happened in the last week with the Tennessee Titans. So, we'll get TD's thoughts on that and the Titans coaching search, and we will chat with him in 1 hour. Willy Donick will join the program after that. We'll break down the Predators, their massive, massive weekend this past weekend. Of course, getting 2 big wins, one on the road at Dallas and one at home against the New York Islanders. So that's coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. But first, teammates, we're breaking down wild card weekend. I think we had 4 so many people listening and so many Titans fans were kind of viewing and watching these games through a little bit of a Titans landscape, maybe through a little bit of a two-tone blue tinted glasses. So I do want to get into that, and I do want to get into your phones. One thing, D-Mace, that we've been discussing, one of my big takeaways from Wildcard Weekend as it pertains to the Titans, Dan Quinn would be a disastrous hire if that is the road that the Titans decide to go down, because Dan Quinn is on the short list of coaches that the Titans have requested to interview. It didn't really make sense to me to begin with, but after that game against the Packers on Sunday, D-Mace, I think that you would just be rehiring exactly what you got with Mike Vrabel, an old school defensive coach whose defenses traditionally underperform in the most important games. So I mean, the Cowboys defense yesterday was wretched, horrendous. I mean, Jordan Love could throw the ball all around the yard. If you're going to hire a defensive minded head coach, at least make it a good defensive minded head coach.
Yeah, you have to. Going Mike Vrabel, I mean, I gave you my reasons why I thought he would be a good fit. Because I don't look at Mike as a defensive minded head coach. Yes, he played
in terms of a hire for the Cowboys.
Yes, in terms of the hire for the Cowboys. I don't see him as a defensive sort of minded coach. Yes, he played defense. Yes, he coached linebackers in Houston. Yes, I think he was the coordinator for a brief stint there. But I think he's more of a CEO than a X's and O's type of guy. I think, he's the guy that rallies everybody, that makes sure, players have what they need to keep players, up and making sure everyone's headed down the same road. He's that type of coach. Now, when it comes to X's and O's, I mean, he doesn't, there's no evidence showing that he's this superior defensive coach or this superior offensive coach. So if you're going to hire, a guy like Mike Vrabel anywhere, let alone Dallas, I think you need to know who his staff is going to be, who he's looking, what his philosophies are going to be, because he's not to me, now, other people may think different, but watching him over the 5 or 6 years here, he's not a defense. He's just not one of those, okay, when you think about defense, great defensive minds, he doesn't come and play. When you think about a great offensive mind, he doesn't come to play. But when you think about a coach that can lead men, that's a really good coach, he does come into factor.
But when it comes to the Titans' next head coach,
I mean,
Dan Quinn is on the list of at least coaches they've requested to interview.
Yeah, and
that defense that we saw yesterday, I have no interest in Dan Quinn.
I know. And see, let's not be a prisoner of the moment, because we all are at times a prisoner of the moment. When we look at the Dallas Cowboys and we saw what happened to them this past weekend against a team that, frankly, I mean, from top to bottom, they're better than the Green Bay Packers. Now, it didn't show, yesterday, and that's the only thing that matters. But when you look at this Dallas team, they have legit players, and this defense did a damn good job throughout the season. So I'm not going to look at Dan Quinn as the last thing I saw of him is totally excluding him from potentially being the Titans' new head coach. No, I'm going to look at the body of his work, What did he do at other stops? His philosophy, does it match my philosophy and our goals as a team? But no way, no how am I going to look at the last game and make a determination on whether he would be a good fit here in Nashville or not. And I know people would do that, and I get it. That's just how sports are. I get it. But I think Dan Quinn, if you're just judging him by this year, he's done a hell of a job. Now, last night, that was not a good job. No way, no how. But for the most part, he has done a wonderful job. Listen, before the game last night, his name was just about on everybody's list as a potential head coach. And they wanted to interview him. And I just can't believe that. And there may be some owners out there that looked at that game and say, nope, we're not hiring Dan Quinn. But I can't look at it and say, well, all 6 or 7 teams that need new head coaches just automatically, X Dan Quinn's name off their list because of what they saw yesterday from the Dallas defense. So, will he be a good fit here in Nashville? I don't know. We talked about this last week, Caroline. One, you want to have a good leader of men.
Yeah.
You do. But then I think in today's offense, today's football, you got to have a guy that knows how to schematically put together a game plan offensively, because this league is so driven by offense. We saw defenses that were, customarily during the season, one of the, top defenses in the NFL, and what happened to them in the playoffs? They got shredded. So you gotta have a guy that can put together a good game plan, and not just put together a good game plan, but orchestrate that game plan in a fashion that is going to put your team in a position to win a football game.
I think it's more so, and it's not just about last night and the Cowboys defense, as horrendous as it was. We talked about this last week. I want an offensive-minded head coach. Now, I'm not married to it. I'm not going to, throw a riot in the streets if they end up hiring a defensive-minded head coach. But where the Titans are right now, where the NFL is right now, you got a young quarterback that's probably your most valuable asset. I would like a head coach to be able to come in and establish an offensive style, so that way Will Levis doesn't have 3 different offensive coordinators in 3 years, that you have an offensive system that will be put in place so you have consistency for your young quarterback. Look at the league right now. Some of the best coaches in the league, whether it's Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay or Andy Reid, those are all offensive-minded head coaches. That's what I want for the Tennessee Titans. And you say that the Cowboys were a better team. I agree. They have a lot more talent on that team. They have a lot more money invested in that roster. And you choke against a team that you should have beaten on the most important stage on this season thus far. That I think the Cowboys probably had a roster that was fit to compete for a Super Bowl. But defensively, you don't show up and you lose that game. And yet again, another year of the Cowboys falling short of expectations. So I think that Dan Quinn, although I was already turned off by the idea of a defensive head coach, look, it's a what have you done for me lately league. And what Dan Quinn has done for the league lately is blow it defensively against the Green Bay Packers in the playoffs. But I do want to get your phones on this. I want to get into some other takeaways as far as the Titans are concerned from the games that we watched this weekend. But first, want to get your thoughts. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Cam is on the line with a thought on the Dallas Cowboys. What's up, Cam?
Hey, good morning, guys. So I had a thought on the Dallas Cowboys, but now it's on D-Mase. So I'm driving my kid to daycare, and he tells me, Dad, let me see the D-Mase highlights. So I have a thing on my phone where I show him the D-Mase highlights. And when we got to the school and I was going to drop him off, and I said, all right, buddy, have a good day. You're playing the snow, whatever. And he just looked sad. And I said, what's wrong, bud? And he said, I don't want to go to school. And I said, why? And he said, D-Mase said I'm light in the ass. And I said, what? He said, because we'd had a conversation a couple years back when Jared had said something along the lines of he didn't give a rat's ass. And my son was like, oh, Daddy, he cussed. And I was like, son, it's different when you're talking about sports. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, then today he did not want to go to school because Derek Mason told him he was lighting the ass.
Oh my
So
gosh, Cam.
and I told him, I said, baby, he wasn't talking about you. Because we always poke fun at him because he's got chicken legs. He's got, I mean,
Poor baby.
he has no butt. And
Hey, tell him he'll grow into it.
yeah, he said, I don't want to go to school and race anymore. And I said, why? I said, you want to go home? I said, we can go home if you want to go home. He said, no, I'm just not going to race. And I said, why are you so upset? He said, D-Mase said I'm lighting the ass. And I said, whoa, watch your mouth. He said, Daddy, you said they can cuss on the radio if it matters for sports. And I was like, well, all right, touche.
Touche, indeed. Cam, thank you for calling.
Thank you, Cam.
For
Appreciate
sharing
it.
that. We tell your son he is not lighting the ass. That we take it
Exactly.
back. We take it back.
Tell him that he has a lot of years of growing. So,
Yeah. And Cam, if you're in the Nashville area, drive safe out there. Appreciate your call. D-Mase, this is a children's program.
absolutely. What are we doing here? Hey, listen. If they don't have a problem, then we don't have a problem. The powers that be, then we're good.
Duke does say he's always listening. So
Yes.
if D-Mase gets pulled off the program here shortly,
I'm
you'll
talking
know
to
why.
the suit.
You'll know why. All right, we had, I think it was a great slate of games over the weekend. We had the Texans absolutely trouncing the Cleveland Browns, Kansas City, and Miami. I feel like the Dolphins didn't even really show up for that game, but they said, oh, it's going to be minus 30 degrees. Yeah, we're good. Kansas City takes down the Dolphins. Green Bay shocks the world, taking down the Dallas Cowboys. And really, wasn't really all that close. And of course, the Rams-Lions game last night, which I thought was an absolute blast. The Lions get their first playoff victory in my lifetime. But D-Mase, I was watching a lot of these games just through the perspective of the Tennessee Titans. And I think probably a lot of Titans fans were as well. And my first takeaway that I shared with you earlier is, look, that Dan Quinn defense looked horrendous with the Dallas Cowboys yesterday. And I know that he's on the short list for the Titans of potential coaching candidates. I know that he's on the short list as a coaching candidate for several other vacancies in the NFL. It's just not what the Titans need right now. Dan Quinn and his style of coaching and a defense that underachieves. That's it. The Titans just got rid of a coach like that. Another thing that I took away, teammates, watching that Texans and Browns game. You know, of course, the Texans being a divisional opponent, you're gonna have a little bit more investment into that game, a team that the Titans are going to see twice a year. But I look at CJ Stroud and what he's able to do. And I have to grade on a curve when I'm comparing CJ Stroud and Will Levis, because the Texans over the last couple of years have invested heavily into the offensive line. The Titans, as we all know, have not. So we're working with two different lines here. We understand how imperative an offensive line is to the success of a quarterback and to the success of an offense. But I look at CJ Stroud and I think, man, like that is a rookie that doesn't play like a rookie. That is a kid with a heck of an arm and accuracy. Will Will Levis turn into that with the Tennessee Titans? And nobody knows the answer. You can hope that he will. You can hope that, that he eventually, he and CJ Stroud, that it'll be, the Manning and Brady of the future. But I do look at CJ Stroud and how much he has elevated that Texans team. And I think, can Will Levis turn into that for the Tennessee Titans?
Well, the Tennessee Titans are hoping he can. You heard Miss Amy briefly talk about, some of the positives with this team, and one of them was the quarterback. But there are still questions on whether, one, can he stay healthy a full season? Now, listen, I put a lot of that on that offensive line, because not only did they get one quarterback hurt, but they got two quarterbacks hurt. So that's not a coincidence, not by any stretch of the imagination. Can he stay healthy? Well, you beef up that offensive line, get that offensive line a little bit better, then I think that'll answer your question in regards to him getting healthy. Can he be consistent? Can whichever coach comes in here, can they coach some of those bad habits out of him that he developed playing behind this bad offensive line. I think that's going to be one of the first tasks for whoever they hire as their head coach, whether it's an offensive minded guy or a defensive minded guy. They're going to have to make sure whatever he learned bad last season because of that offensive line, they need to make sure they get that out of his system. And then can he play at a consistent level every game? In this league, your quarterback has to be consistent in order to win football games. You can't be up and down. 1 minute you're playing like an elite quarterback, and then 2 weeks later you're playing like a guy that never should have picked up a football in your life. You can't have that. And we've seen some ups and downs with Will Levis. He looked great against Atlanta, and then he plays, he comes back and he plays against Pittsburgh. He plays well, but then he has some more ups and downs throughout, his short stint as a starter here with the Titans. So they just got to get him consistent as a quarterback, and then they need to find him a young stud, a playmaker. They need to find that. D-Hop is going to be here, but D-Hop is getting older. They need someone that he can grow with. I still believe in Traylon Burks, but they need to draft somebody else just in case. They don't need to put all their eggs in the basket of Traylon Burks. Do I think Traylon Burks has all the talent in the world? Absolutely. Do I still believe in him as a player? Absolutely. But I'm not going to be naive and not go out and get somebody just because I believe in who Traylon Burks can be as a player. So you go out and you get him another playmaker, beef up that offensive line. So I think he has the tools to be a really good quarterback in this league. But Caroline, we've seen a bunch of guys with tools in this game and never were able to pull them out to use them. So I want him to be a guy that has those tools that can pull them out each and every week and win football games.
And that's the question with Will Levis, the consistency. Can you stay healthy? And when I compare both Will Levis and CJ Stroud and looking at what the Titans would need Will Levis to be in order to become competitive in the division again, I have to think about how much of it is on Will Levis and his development and his ability, and how much of it is on the Titans putting the right pieces around Will Levis. Because as we've learned, you don't get a very long leash in the NFL. You might not get as much time as you probably should in order to prove yourself as a starter in this league. Either you are or you are not, and you cannot afford to hold on to a quarterback for too long that might, send this franchise backwards. So Will Levis isn't going to get all the time in the world. But the Texans invested around CJ Stroud. They invested in the offensive line. Bobby Slowick, offensive coordinator in Houston, who is going to get a head coaching job in the NFL. It's just a matter of where he's going. I think it'll be in this cycle.
If I'm Houston, I'm making him assistant coach. I'm giving him more money just to keep him there another year, at least.
If I'm the Texans, I would do whatever it takes. But if I'm Bobby Slowick, I look at it like, look, my stock is high. I'm going to go take a head coaching opportunity if I can get one, because I think he will be able to get one. But CJ Stroud just felt like he walked into a position that gave enough foundation, enough support to a young quarterback. Now, I think that CJ Stroud and his ability has been able to take that and absolutely run with it. It's not just about what's around him. It's also about his inherent ability. And I look at what the Titans have done, or what they haven't done, to make Will Levis successful. That offensive line, no wonder he's hurt. With that offensive line, no wonder he's developing bad habits. So it's about not just Will Levis and his ability, because we know that he has inherent talent. It's also how much the Titans decide to invest and build around Will Levis. It's about the Titans, really.
Well, they're going to have to invest big and build. If they believe that Will Levis is their quarterback moving forward, or they have a good idea that he's the quarterback moving forward, then you have to put players in place so you can truly see whether he's the guy or not. Because if you don't have those players in place, he doesn't work out. The next guy isn't going to work out as well either. Why? Because you don't have the playmakers in place to give them an opportunity. Listen, There's a reason why CJ Stroud is as good as he has been this season because he has guys that are making plays around him. He has an offensive line that can block for him. There's a reason why Bryce Young struggled like he did. He didn't have an offensive line and he didn't have any playmakers around him. There's a reason why he struggled, and there's a reason why CJ Stroud didn't struggle. There's a reason why Will Levis struggled after that first game in Atlanta. I mean, when Atlanta came here and he lit them up. Why? Because he didn't have an offensive line in front of him, and they didn't have enough explosive plays. They didn't have enough playmakers consistently on that team outside of D Hop. So whether Levis ends up being a quarterback or not, they still have to surround this team with playmakers.
Yeah, it's about what you put around it. You set your young quarterback up for success. That is why right now with the Tennessee Titans, it is such a pivotal moment that you cannot afford to miss on this coaching hire. Because you're going to do to Will Levis what the Cleveland Browns did to Baker Mayfield and what
Yeah.
we've seen so many organizations do with young quarterbacks and mismanaging young quarterbacks. And it sets your franchise back. The Titans cannot afford to miss on this hire. And another takeaway, D-Mase, which is kind of depressing watching these games, I thought the Titans and what we've seen them look like throughout a majority of the season, not every game, but what we've seen them look like a majority of this season, it looked like they didn't even belong on the same field as some of the teams that we saw over the weekend. And that's depressing, that it just feels like this team is so far away. And as we've seen with the Texans went from, basically worst to first in the division. And we've seen them turn it around. And I know the Texans were so bad for so long and they collected a lot of high draft picks. I understand that. But they went from being horrendous to now on their way to the divisional round of the playoffs. And that at least can give me hope. But I watched some of those teams. I mean, like this Titans team's offense doesn't look like how the Texans offense looked or how, Matthew Stafford and the Lions offense looked yesterday. They just feel so far away from being able to be competitive with some of these teams.
Well, yeah, at this point, and we've been, screaming this from the mountaintops for the last year and a half, 2 years. The roster from top to bottom just isn't good, and they're not developing players to ultimately be, game changers within their team or huge contributors within their team. They just hadn't been able to do that. You can go down a list of guys that have come and gone off this team and didn't show any development whatsoever. It seems like Houston, on the flip side, they're developing guys to be like key contributors to what they're doing, whether it be offense, defense, or special teams. So they got to come in and they got to fix this roster from top to bottom in order to sort of be in that space that the Houston Texans are in now, that we believe the Indianapolis Colts may be in next year. Hell, Jacksonville's the same team. They're going to be a little bit better. They're going to change their defensive coordinator, so you just think they're going to be a little bit better. So the Titans have to figure out a way this offseason. They got a bunch of money to spend, so they can't blame it on the cap or anything else. They need to go out there and get the right players for this team. They don't need to spend all willy-nilly and just give guys contracts, but there are going to be a few guys that they may have to overpay to get them to come here to Nashville and play.
All right, we'll continue this conversation coming up next. Also, get into your phones on this. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Teams that we saw on Wild Card Weekend, but how do you get from where the Titans are now to back to being competitive in the playoffs? A little off-season to-do list coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Stay tuned in to 94.9 The Fan this Thursday night for Vanderbilt women's basketball. The Commodores will be at home taking on Auburn. Tip-off is at 6:30 p.m. and pregame begins at 6:15 p.m. Coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. We're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. D-Mase and I are on remote today. Stay safe, everyone. Looking out my window right now, and it's snowing hard. It is snowing really hard. So be careful. If you can stay home, please do. Try to stay off the roads. Try to avoid driving if you can. And of course, stay warm. Willy Donick will join us here in just over an hour. We'll get his breakdown, what we saw from the Predators over the weekend. A huge, huge weekend for the Predators and 2 games that they needed to win, and they did. TD, Teron Davenport, will join us in 30 minutes. Go all the way back. The day Mike Vrabel got fired. What does TD make of it? Does he think that Amy Adams-Strunk made the right decision? We'll break that down with TD in 30 minutes. But I want to start here, D-Mase, of kind of our takeaways from the Wild Card weekend, watching these games through a Titans scope, through a Titans prism of, watching the Texans just absolutely demolish the Cleveland Browns. And that vaunted Cleveland Brown defense essentially was pretty much a non-factor. The Texans dropped 40 plus on that defense. Of when will Levis do that for the Tennessee Titans? Can he be for the Titans what CJ Stroud has been for the Texans in this massive turnaround? And really another thing was that I took away was these teams are good and the Titans aren't. And that's it's about as eloquent as I could put it. Of the Titans feel so far away from being able to be competitive with these teams that we watched yesterday. And 4 more teams that we are going to see tonight. Of course, Steelers and Bills rescheduled for today with the weather. So that kicks off in 3 hours at 3:30, and then we'll have Eagles and Bucks tonight. But anyways, when we talk about the offseason to-do list of how do the Titans get from where they are now, with an offensive line that needs to be reconstructed, you need more pass catchers in that room. You need a lot of help in the secondary. How do you get to where you are now and to what comes next, to being one of those teams that shocks the world like the Green Bay Packers did yesterday, taking down the Dallas Cowboys? How can you be a team like the Houston Texans that have had such a meteoric rise from what they were last year, really not all that great, to what they are this year, now finding themselves in the divisional round of the playoffs? But ESPN.com put out a 2024 NFL offseason guide. Everything that you need to know about all 32 teams as they enter the offseason. One important question that the Titans need to answer is, what are you doing with Derrick Henry next season? Because that opens up a need at the running back position. That would then open up questions about what this offense really truly does look like next season. And of course, we'll get more answers to that whenever the Titans go through the rest of their interviews with head coaches, once they make a hire at the head coaching position. But Jeremy Fowler had a tidbit in the Titans offseason guide. It says Derrick Henry parting with the only NFL team that he has ever known seems like a real possibility at this point. He turns 30 in January and rushed for 4.2 yards per carry this season, tying the lowest average of his career, though he still produced over 1,100 yards and 12 touchdowns. The Titans came close to trading Henry in the past, and rookie Tajay Spears looks poised for a bigger role. But even still, perhaps the Titans and Henry could reach a 2-year bridge deal at somewhere around $10 million per year to allow him to retire a Titan. When you hear that, D-Mase, again, this is a piece on ESPN.com, Dan Graziano, Jeremy Fowler, Dan Schatz, several people that are contributors for ESPN.com kind of broke down all of these off-season bullet points for all 32 teams in the National Football League. When you hear what Jeremy Fowler wrote there, do you think that's opinion, or do you think that's coming from some insight from Jeremy Fowler?
Oh man, I mean, I think it's an opinion. I don't think because they're changing head coaches, so you don't know what the next head coach is thinking in regards to guys that you may potentially move on from, or the guys you may potentially want to re-sign or sign back to this team. So I think it's his opinion in regards to Derrick Henry. Now, again, we've talked about this for the last couple of weeks. Should Derrick Henry go somewhere else? Should the Titans try to re-sign him? Um, I think, because he's still a good runner in this league, but if you're going to re-sign Derrick Henry back, it has to be on a, team-friendly contract. It's going to have to be understood by Derrick Henry that you won't have, 250 carries per season. You're going to be splitting times with Tajay Spears. And Tajay Spears may be more of the feature back than you because our offense is evolving. We want to use the back out the backfield in a lot of our formations. We want to find that mismatch in the passing game. So that may it will take a lot of opportunities away from Derrick Henry running the football, but he's been such a fixture to this organization. He's carried this organization really for the last couple of years, especially on that AFC Championship run. It was on the back of Derrick Henry that they got there. So you may, reach out to his representatives and see what they're thinking, and then if you feel that it's possibly a good match, and you offer him a contract, but allowing him to still go test the market, and see if he can get with a team that's already ready to win. Because this Titan team, unless they make some key acquisitions during the offseason and they hit on their draft picks during the draft, this team is about a year or two away from seriously contending, and maybe even longer than that. But we've seen where, hell, the Houston Texans were sort of in the same boat that the Titans were in this year. And look at where the Houston Texans are at now. It's because they got a new head coach and a new quarterback. Well, the Titans can be there, but, Derrick Henry may or may not be a part of the next coach's vision. So, you got to have a talk with them, and you got to let them know that, hey, listen, if you find a better deal out there, then take it. But if not, then we can possibly work something out here. But you're coming back to a situation that is not like you left in regards to his importance to this offense, not the team, but to the offense.
And as far as the head coach is concerned, that comes back to the question that we all had, and we've all had for the last year plus, of who's actually calling the shots in this organization, who actually has final say, whose decision-making power is this really? And so you might look at it and say, well, it doesn't really matter what the head coach wants. It doesn't really matter what the head coach thinks because it's up to Rand Carthon. He's the general manager. He can make decisions like that. But when it comes to whenever we get something like that from national insiders, the Schefters, the Rossinis, in this case, the Fowlers, I always have to ask myself, are you telling me or are you telling me? Like, you are telling me something. Like when Diana Rossini said on draft night, it's my sense that the Titans might want to trade up and draft a quarterback. Like, really? Your sense is telling you that? You have your spidey senses are tingling. I think you may have heard that from somebody. The reason why I don't think that this is merely just opinion from Jeremy Fowler is this last little tidbit in this paragraph that says, even still, perhaps the Titans and Henry could reach a 2-year bridge deal at somewhere around $10 million per year to allow him to retire a Titan.
They're not going to pay him $10 million per year.
But that's pretty specific.
Yeah, but they're not going to pay him. I'm pretty sure that maybe those are the numbers that his camp is looking at. And
it could be from the agents of this is what we want. Amy, Rand, if you're hearing what Jeremy Fowler's putting out there, $10 million 2-year bridge deal, we could be on board for that.
But you can't reach in this situation, especially with Derrick Henry. You allow him to go test the market, and if there's a deal out there that he likes, he can come back to the table, and we can see what we can do. But I'm not giving $10 million for the next 2 years to a back. Now, maybe 5, 6 with some incentives, yes, but not a flat out 10, and nothing. And I'm not making anything guaranteed with the contract. So I think a lot of it depends on Derrick Henry, really. Does he want to come back and live through a rebuild? And hope and pray that they can do what the Texans did this year and just hit lightning in a bottle and start rolling. Because if that doesn't happen, then what you're saying is you're going to spend the next 2 years of your career and probably the last 2 years of your career on a non-winning team. And I'm sure Derrick Henry doesn't want to go out that way. So my thing is allow him to go test the market, build your team, continue to build your team. And if there's a space to draft, I mean, if there's space to sign him back, then you sign him back. And it's not necessarily, again, it's him understanding when he comes back what we used to do and what we're doing now is totally different, and you got to be on board with that. And I'm not saying Derrick Henry wouldn't be on board with it, but again, do you hope to catch lightning in a bottle like Houston did this season and expedite that curve, or are you willing to sit for possibly the last 2 years of your career on a team that wins 6 games, maybe 7, but the ceiling is probably 8 or 9, and you're not going to the playoffs? Who wants to do that?
It's a good question, and we don't know how Derrick Henry feels.
Exactly.
Derrick Henry is not going to tell us. I mean, he is the king of saying a lot without saying anything.
I think he wants to win, but where does he feel he can win now?
And it depends on, because he's not going to tell you. Can we pick up on context clues? Well, if we think that Jeremy Fowler is hearing something, which I don't think that Jeremy Fowler would throw out 2-year bridge deal worth $10 million a year so he could retire a Titan. I don't think that Jeremy Fowler is just coming up with that and throwing that in there just for S's and G's because he feels like it. I think that's coming from somewhere. And I don't know if it is, but that's just my opinion, my feeling based off of what he wrote. He's getting that from somewhere. So he's either getting it from the Titans or he's getting it from Derrick Henry's people. I don't know who Jeremy Fowler's, inside people with the Titans is, but it kind of sounds like it's coming from Derrick Henry's people, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe they're using Jeremy Fowler to communicate with the Titans of, look, this is what we're looking for. Are you willing to negotiate? I do not know. But I think that this tidbit in there of this would allow him to retire a Titan. If that is indeed coming from Derrick Henry's people, then I think that it sounds like Derrick Henry is open to staying here. Would he be willing to take $1 million a year over the next 2 years to stay here? Probably not. It's a business decision for Derrick Henry, just as much as it's a business decision for the Tennessee Titans. But I think that right there, that might be Derrick Henry's people telling you his price. We want to retire a Titan, but we got a price for it.
And because I don't think that something that specific in regards to the contract would come out of the Tennessee Titans building. Now, hey, it may, I don't know, but the way I'm looking at it and the way I'm reading it, that part doesn't seem as if it would have came out of the Titans building. That seems
why would they share that?
Exactly. That's something that probably more than likely came from an agent of Derrick Henry or somebody that's affiliated and can speak on the behalf of Derrick Henry. So I think that's where that came from. But listen, again, you're hiring a new coach. You got to let him tell you what you got a vision. Hopefully your vision's in line. If you hire him, then yeah, your vision in lines, but you still got to allow the head coach to say, hey, listen, we're moving away from that. And this is what we want to do. If you want a more explosive, up-tempo, high-powered offense, then keeping Derrick Henry may hinder some things that we can do offensively or what we want to do offensively. Yes, he's a great runner, but man, he doesn't give us those other things that a Tajay Spears will give us, or some of these other young, shifty, backs that can catch the ball out the backfield. That's something that Derrick Henry can't give you, and he's only getting older. He's not getting any younger. So my thing is allow the new head coach to dictate that part. Let him know that Derrick Henry, hey, there's a possibility, but if you see as a head coach, like, okay, this is the direction that we want to go as far as the personnel, then you got to let the coach his team.
So this is in this piece on ESPN.com. Jeremy Fowler writes, perhaps, maybe If the Titans would offer a 2-year bridge deal at somewhere around $10 million per year, it would allow him to retire a Titan.
Mhm.
If you are the Titans general manager, do you give him that deal? 2 years, 10 million per.
No, I'm not.
What deal would you be on board for?
Mine would be 2 years, maybe 9 million, 8 million, 8, 9, 4 per year with incentives.
8
Uh,
total, 4 per
yeah,
year.
8, yeah, 4 per year
Woo!
with incentives. Look at all the other backs that are, 30 and older. They're not making no more than $2 or $3 million a year. So I am not going to go above and beyond for a guy that we're sort of segueing out of, and doesn't sort of helps us usher into this new way of football. I am not giving him 10 million. But then again, hey, listen, you're only worth as much as you believe you're worth.
Mhm.
And if Derrick Henry says he's worth $10 million, then he feels that go out and test the market. If I'm a GM and you believe you're worth $10 million as it sits, I am going to say to him, listen, I'm going to do you a favor. Go out and test the market, but this is the contract that we have. 2 years, maybe 10 million, 5 per year with some incentives. But we're not giving you 2 years, 20 million and 10 per. I'm not doing that because I'm not, yeah, it's very steep. And I don't think you're gonna get back what you put in regards to that.
I have said that I would sign Derrick Henry to a 2-year deal worth 12 million, 6 million per. To make
Mhm.
that jump to 2-year, 10 million, that is a massive jump. You have to ask the
Yeah.
question. How valuable are you to this football team, and how valuable are you to a young quarterback? Because we've said it, I believe wholeheartedly, the Titans' most valuable asset right now is Will Levis. The Titans' number one priority this offseason is how can we set Will Levis up for success? Where does Derrick Henry play in that equation? If you say we need Derrick Henry because we feel like we'll get the most out of Will Levis if he has that kind of backup plan, that security blanket of Derrick Henry, and we are willing to pay him whatever it takes, then fine, because that's what you
Mhm.
believe his value is to a young quarterback. But I want to get your thoughts on this coming up next. Everything is on the table. What Jeremy Fowler wrote about Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans this offseason. Your takeaways from Wild Card Weekend this past weekend, right into your phones on this coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Hey, this is the time of year we reflect on the past and make plans for the year ahead, people. If you made a resolution to lose weight this year and you diet and exercise but still struggle to lose the pounds, it could be because your hormones are imbalanced. So let's get those things balanced back again, okay, people? So call my friends at Cool Springs MD. They're experienced doctors specialized in identifying which of your hormones need to be balanced and provide a tailored solution designed just for you. No one else but you. Imbalanced hormones can also cause more problems than just weight loss, people, okay? You may experience mood swings, fatigue, and decreased sex drive. Hormone replacement therapy or HRT can help. Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and his team understands its frustrating cycles and want to help you be the best you this year. So there's no better time to achieve a healthy lifestyle, people. What are you waiting for? Give Cool Springs MD a call today for an appointment. 615-486-3458. That's 615-486-3458, or visit their website at coolspringsmd.com. Don't let imbalanced hormones hinder your resolution. Give Cool Springs MD a call to take control of your health with HRT at Cool Springs MD.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Stay tuned into 93.3 Classic Hits this Thursday night for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders are on the road facing UTEP with pregame beginning at 7:30 and tip-off at 8 p.m. Coverage also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com. D-Mase, we have some phones, so unless you have a thought.
Hey, let's go to the phones.
Let's get to the phones. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to join the conversation. TD will join us in 10 minutes. Skylar Texan says, I may stroke out if I watch the Titans line up in I formation and run the ball with Derrick Henry for another year. LOL, I love Derrick Henry, but damn it, let's throw the football.
I mean, I get it. And I think, I think fans, as much as they love Derrick Henry, they are tired of seeing the same brand of football. While they're looking around and the Houston Texans have widened their offense, it seems like Indianapolis was widening their offense before Richardson got hurt. We see Jacksonville have more of a spread, wide open offense, even though all three teams do still run the football. And I'm not even talking about the teams outside of the division. I'm just talking about those three teams. So when fans are watching this, yes, we love Derrick Henry, but if we retain Derrick Henry, we're going to still end up playing that brand of football. And fans want to see the Titans sort of usher themselves into the new football, which is, more of a up-tempo, pass-oriented. Not that you are pass-heavy, you're just more pass-centric or pass-oriented. And, you have two backs that can be multiple, not just run the football, but they can catch the ball out the backfield.
See, I think that you can do both. And I think that you can be more pass heavy. You can bring your offense a little bit more into the 21st century, because I felt the same way that probably a lot of Titans fans felt over the weekend. Offensive jealousy. Like, I want the Titans to look like that, but I think that you can start to evolve your offense while still having Derrick Henry on the team. Now, of course, it has to be right. The price has to be right. Jeremy Fowler wrote in ESPN.com, hey, maybe if the Titans are on board for a 2-year bridge deal worth $10 million per, Derrick Henry could retire a Titan. I think that's coming from Derrick Henry's camp. I think that's maybe setting the price. Just my thought, just my opinion. That's Derrick Henry's price. 2-year, $10 million per. It's a little steep. But I think that you can do both. Look at who's the best running back in the National Football League. Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
49ers still throw the football a lot. The 49ers are very much so an evolved offense, a 21st century offense. The 49ers look like one of the best teams, if not the best team in the National Football League. And I know that Christian McCaffrey catches more balls out of the backfield than Derrick Henry does. I understand that. But you can be a modern offense with a really good running back. I think you can do both.
But I think, your running back has to have the ability to be multiple. It works with Christian McCaffrey because you don't know if he's running a football or if he's going to come out the backfield and catch the football.
Yeah, they're different kind of backs for sure.
Yeah, and then you just look at the weapons outside of Christian McCaffrey. IU, Deebo Samuel, Kittles. I mean, they got Pro Bowlers just roaming around, going against opposing teams secondary each and every week. So not only do you have a versatile Pro Bowl back, but you got Pro Bowlers in both of your wide receivers and in your tight end. If the Titans want to have that type of offense, then they're going to have to they're going to have to upgrade their skill position, and they're going to have to do it this offseason.
Ed Texan says, isn't it hard for any team to fade a superstar? He was the face. To have him come back and not be the face of the team is almost impossible. Pave the way for Levis. He's the new face. I think that you can have multiple good players on a team. And of course it's difficult to start to fade out the superstar. Of course it's difficult to move on from the player that everyone knows and loves. When you watch a Titans game on TV, you see 22 jerseys everywhere. D-Mase, when we were sitting at training camp, there were several players' children that were on the sidelines and running onto the field. Every single one of them had a 22 jersey on. Their dads
Yeah.
play for the team. So yes, of course, he is the face of your franchise, but you can have more than one face. Will Levis, I think, can develop more with a safety and security blanket like a Derrick Henry. But that's just my thought.
I think the problem is this, not that it's necessarily hard to segue from a guy that has been so instrumental or a fan favorite, a community favorite. It's when that fan favorite or community favorite still has good football in him. So sometimes you may hold on a year too long. And I think that's where the Titans are at. They know Derrick Henry still has good football left in him, but how much or how many carries? And you don't want to be the team that holds on a year too long and you're not getting the production that you thought you were going to get out of them under contracts that basically is guaranteed for the next 2 years, meaning next 2 years, 2 seasons. So I think that's the dilemma that the Titans are in. I think that may be the dilemma that a lot of fans are in, knowing that Derrick Henry can still run the football. But I get it. But eventually, like any other team, you have to move on. But you have to make sure that when you do move on, you have guys in place that can come in and not be Derrick Henry, but that can give you the production together that Derrick Henry gave you, running the football, more importantly, being a diverse back and being able to catch passes out the backfield.
I'm interested to hear TD's thoughts on that. He will join us coming up next. Ron Davenport. Also, that's coming out from Albert Breer. The Titans will interview Dan Quinn on Wednesday. I don't want any piece of Dan Quinn,
You
but
can't let one game change what you're going to do.
I don't want Dan Quinn. But he will interview with the Titans on Wednesday. We'll chat with TD coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and the Game Nashville app on a snowy Monday. Be careful, stay safe, stay warm out there. I know D-Mase and I are both doing the show from home today to avoid the snowy conditions. So if you can do so, I highly recommend doing so. But big shout out to Nick Frazier and the rest of our producers who braved the storm so we could be on air today. So shout out to all of our producers and everyone that made their way into the station today, and everyone out there who has had to brave the elements to make sure that we are all taken care of. All of our first responders, doctors, nurses, appreciate all of you for getting out and doing what, frankly, I was not brave enough to do today. All right, TD joins us now, Teron Davenport. TD, it is so great to have you back on the program, and we miss you dearly, especially considering all of what has happened with the Tennessee Titans over the last week. I'll start with the biggest news of the last week or so. Mike Vrabel fired by the Tennessee Titans. What was your initial reaction when you heard the news that the Titans were moving on from Vrabel?
Well, honestly, it was something I knew that was going to happen. Basically, I had an idea Sunday that it was just a matter of time. And I'll say this, man, it's great to be back. I definitely love just the privilege to be able to talk shop with you guys and just to do what we do, man. It's a blessing. So I'll definitely say that. But with Mike Vrabel and the firing, it was just one of those things where I know a lot of people think it was a sudden jerk reaction, and it wasn't necessarily that. There's just sometimes you understand the definition of insanity, and I think that's what happened in that building. It was a matter of, hey, we can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And it's just like a relationship, right, that kind of ran its course. And after a certain point, it was time for a split, and it's going to be better for both parties. I firmly believe that, because we know Mike Vrabel is an outstanding coach and a leader, and I'm sure he's going to go somewhere and really benefit another organization. And conversely, Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker and Anthony Robinson, Amy Adams Strunk, they're going to have an organization that will get the arrow pointed back in the upwards direction.
TD is with us. And yeah, to that point, look, I think that Mike Vrabel's a good coach, but the most important thing in this league is winning and losing. And you haven't been doing a whole lot of winning recently. So just based off of some conversations that you've had with people within the building, some reporting that we've heard, what would you point to as the number one reason why the Titans moved on from Mike Vrabel, and maybe how that might influence this upcoming coaching search?
Well, I think it was just, as I said, realizing that this formula isn't working. That's really, I would say, if you look in the locker room, and if you remember a few weeks ago, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago it was, I asked Mike Vrabel for evidence of how he feels he hasn't lost the locker room. And that was a well-founded question, because that was something that was kind of arising within the players. Not necessarily that he was losing the locker room, but that some of the guys felt that the message was starting to get stale. And I said it before, I liken it a lot to back before Jim Harbaugh took over with the 49ers, right? Mike Singletary took over. He was the interim. They won some games. They got closer to 500. The next year they had a solid record. They didn't win on the success level that Mike Vrabel did, but they were competitive. And then that following year, they were losing, and everybody was like, man, forget this. Like, I'm not for all this. And I'm not saying that everybody in the building or the locker room was like that, but there was definitely some dissension arising among various players. And not just the guys who going out, had some things to say on social media.
Now, TD, we're talking with Teron Davenport, and Teron, it's good to have you back, man. We missed you having you on the air to give your insights on the Titans. So it's good to have you back on the air again, my brother. But you've talked to Rand Carthon several times. Did it ever bother him, or did he give an indication that it bothered him, that everything that was coming out was pro head coach and sort of a slight to what he was doing in his job as a GM? Because it just seems like everything that came out was Vrabel's doing this, Vrabel's this great coach. And then when it came to Rand Carthon, it was almost like you didn't deserve the job, you shouldn't have, you wasn't the guy, and all of this other stuff. So do you think with talking with Rand, do you think it ever bothered him in a sense?
Well, naturally, it bothered him just because he's a human being, right? Imagine
Mhm.
finally getting, and okay, here we go. Imagine when you were in the league, right, doing the
Mhm.
things that you were doing. Imagine somebody saying, "Oh, well, he only got that because he's, whatever," and discrediting all the hard work that you did, everything that you sacrificed to put yourself in that position, and have that privilege to play in the league, or in his case, have that privilege to be the general manager of the Titans. So naturally, it bothered him. I think what you saw, honestly, is just a
Mhm.
testament to the people skills that he has, because through it all, he decided he made sure, and even at the press conference a week ago, he made sure that he didn't say a single bad thing about Mike Vrabel. That's because he didn't have a bad thing to say, truly, because they got along. But as far as the acceptance factor, as you know from the story, the Athletic posted, right, that wasn't
Mhm.
exactly there. But Rand just continued to keep his head down, go to work, and do what he needed to do. And I think, when you look at the fact that he hasn't spoken, he didn't speak during the season. A lot of people had a big issue with that, but it was a very strategic move. It was a very self-sacrificing move, because he said, hey, and this is what he told me, when I talked to him before the story that I did about their relationship. He said, look, during the season, that's not my time to talk. During the season, it's all
Mhm.
about the coaches and the players. But once the season is over, then that will be my time to come to the forefront, because that's going to be my season. And you saw that already, because he came out and spoke at the press conference for something that, frankly, he had nothing to do with, right? So you
Mhm.
got to give him credit for that. And naturally, it bothered him.
Now, what do you make of his press conference? Because I mean, people took away from it that, maybe Amy put him in a position, that wasn't advantageous to him, because she had already put her message out through Mike Keith. And if people want to go back and listen to that, you can through our app, what she said about, the team and their direction. So she had already put out her message, but then
Yeah.
Rand comes back right behind her and does an interview, and he's basically regurgitating what she said in a sense, and people just kept. And I understand why they were, pushing them a little bit, but some people took it as, what, it was a failed, it was a failed press conference, because he didn't give much to, to those that were there. So how do you see that press conference, or how did you see it?
Yeah, no one liked the press conference, right? Everybody
Hmm.
had an issue. Oh, he
Absolutely.
didn't share the vision. Oh, he said that everything was cool with Mike. He said that all the different things he said, right? And I
Hmm.
get it. You go into a press conference with an expectation. And I mean, if you just look at it just in black and white, yeah, it wasn't a very good one. But there's this wonderful thing called context. And I think when you look at the context of this situation, what exactly do you want this man to say, right? So, in regards to what Amy Adams Strong said in her video, do you want him to come out there and say, hey, you know what? That's not true. This, and this is. Or do you want him to share basically what his understanding of the situation is? I think that's what you have to look at. And the vision part of it, yeah, man, like you definitely want to know the vision. And obviously with season ticket sales being pushed out and holders being asked to renew them and all that stuff, or not renew them, but purchase them, you obviously want the vision to go out. But at the same time, there's a search, right, going on. When you were going against Dale Carter or Deion Sanders, did you want him to know how you were going to release on each and every play? No. And just the same as they're going through this head coaching search with 9 different coaches, the way I look at it is they don't want to announce the vision to him so he could come in and say, hey, this is, you know what I mean? This is what
Hmm.
I want to do, and it being something that he heard. Now, granted, you could go in and you could share parts of it. He could have done a better job there, right? Like, he's not beyond reproach. I'm not going to sit here and apologize for anything. He could have done a better job of just kind of giving an idea or a Cliff Notes version, so to speak, of the vision. I will go there. But, I mean, overall, the press conference is one where, he wasn't really able to acquit himself and speak from a perspective that I'm sure he's going to be able to speak to after the head coach is announced and in due time when the power structure and everything is revealed. And I'll say this, I know that there's people who have this idea that he, wants to play GM and not be GM, and he has no idea how to run a business or an organization, and even our own Jarrett Stillman repetitively calls him incompetent. These things are categorically wrong. And I will say that not because of conversations with him, but conversations with other people. There was a situation in there that, you weren't really able to – he wasn't able to really fully exert himself as the GM. I'll put it that way. And you'll see, this year is really when you'll be able to actually fully grade how he is as an executive.
Now, who do you believe should be the next coach of the Tennessee Titans, Teron?
Oh, without a doubt. I love what Bobby Slowick did, right? But, in talking to people in Houston, there's this prevailing thought that he's not ready for personality-wise as far as the leadership perspective, because we have to remember it's a lot more than X's and O's, right? But if he were to be the head coach, I think that would be a good situation because he came from the collaborative approach and everything there in San Francisco. But for me, it's Brian Callahan. And I think when you look at Brian Callahan, I watched different coaching clinic tapes of him as far as, like, speaking about the offense. I talked to people in Cincinnati, players. They really love him. They respond to him. There was a time in the bye week. It was week 6. They beat Seattle 17-13. Again, I would say they beat Seattle, right? They had 214 total yards of offense. Brian Callahan, before the bye week, laid into them. I'm talking about, like, really laid into them. And Orlando Brown Jr., the left tackle, he commended Brian Callahan for the way that he laid into them and not settling for, okay, yeah, they won, but 214 total yards of offense. You know what they did the next week after the bye week? They went and whooped the 49ers behind in San Francisco. You look at that, right? Leader, a guy who gets players to respond. And then you look at the quarterbacks that he's worked with. I don't know, Peyton Manning, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, say what you want about him, and now Joe Burrow, right? So you have that. And you have his father, Bill Callahan, was an O-line coach and actually a pretty solid coach for the Raiders. So you got that. There's a lot of things to like about him, and I could go on and on, like further detail about some of his tendencies and things like that I saw. I just think that he would be a really good coach, and the good thing is he's a younger guy. He's someone that could be around. He's offensive coach, so now you don't have to worry about changeover as far as the scheme is concerned. I think you have him as the head coach. You do what Stillman said and it's a brilliant idea by Jarrett, is to have Liam Cohen as the OC, right? Yeah. So now it's 3 schemes that Levis has learned in 4 years instead of 4 and 4. So you have that. Charles London, in my opinion, absolutely, I don't care if Jesus gets the job, he needs to be the QB coach at a minimum. Mm-hmm. And then you also have him as a pass game coordinator, because a lot of Levis's development was but it was helped by Charles London and their QB school that they did on every Monday and Tuesday. So that too. So that's the way I would look at it. And just to take it a little step further, man, if you want to attack on defense, there's a guy by the name of Wink Martindale over there in Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be lovely to have him come in and do what he does.
Hey, that means you got to get you some corners now if you're going to play that wing defense.
Yeah, you got to get some man corner. But, hey, you know what?
Absolutely.
What was the big thing? They didn't do enough press man defense, right? So, it could be a good thing for some of the guys who didn't get to showcase their abilities to do that, a la Christian Fulton.
Add a few corners to the already long wish list that I've written for a Christmas wish list for Rantaclaus. Need a lineman? Need receivers, need some corners as well. Teron Davenport is with us. You bring up Brian Callahan, and I'm with you wholeheartedly that while I'm not married to the idea of an offensive head coach, my number one priority this offseason and in this coaching search is Will Levis, his development.
Yeah.
Can you put the right pieces personnel wise and coaching wise around him to develop into his full potential? And when you constantly have a carousel of offensive coordinators and he's learning new systems every year, well, how do you expect him to thrive in an environment like that? But looking at two other offensive candidates, Bobby Slowick and Ben Johnson. I know the Titans have requested to interview them. I'm sure every vacancy across the NFL has requested to interview both Bobby Slowick and Ben Johnson. But what is your perception on them, TD, and anything that you've heard on them from within the Titans building?
Yeah, well, I haven't heard anything in regards to Ben Johnson, to be honest with you. Here's the thing. I don't even – yeah, they put in a request, but I don't even put it. It's like trying to date somebody. It's like me trying to date Rihanna. Like, yeah, it's something to really want to pursue, and yeah, it would be great. But I don't think there's a match there, right? Because you look at obviously Jim Harbaugh is interviewing for the Chargers, but I mean, look, like that's called a spade a spade. I think the Chargers is a better opportunity, and then after that break beating that the Cowboys suffered yesterday, who knows?
Oh, man.
That job might be available too, So
yeah.
I think Ben Johnson, hey, if he came here, it'd be great. You look at the development with Jared Goff and how they married, what he wants to do to what Sean McVay used to do. I mean, that's awesome. You definitely like that. But I just don't know that it's something that is within their striking distance, Ben Johnson. Now, Bobby Slowick, obviously there's the degree of familiarity that he has with Rand Carthon and with the collaboration concept, looking at what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have established there in San Francisco. And we know this the Titans, in essence, want to be 49ers South. So that's something. There's definitely ties there. I'll say this, though, in talking to, different people, one of the things that I got that kind of surprised me is that there's not 100%, hey, this is all credited to him, our success. That's not the prevailing thought among the players. A lot of those guys are like, man, it's because of us. So that's something that's interesting as you look at how this whole thing evolves. I didn't really get much feedback as far as how, players respond to him and things like that. So I don't know there, but, I mean, obviously the familiarity, it makes him a really good candidate. But, yeah, man, I go back to Brian Callahan. I just think that he would be the perfect match.
TD, quickly, if Dallas do move on from Mike McCarthy, do you think he'll get another head coaching job, or do you think he will slide into a OC role?
Yeah, I think he slides into an OC role. The Dallas thing just didn't work out, and I don't know that he gets another head coaching job. It may be quite some time. We know there are guys, those guys like McCarthy, they tend to get, retread, re-opportunities, but I don't think so. I think OC and maybe head coach like at the college level, maybe that.
Now, would you be opposed to, say, if they hired Callahan and Callahan wanted to bring on a McCarthy? I don't know if they run the same offense or not, but I'm sure they think alike in regards to being multiple and everything else. Would that be a good fit, you think?
Yeah, I think you can make it fit. And the thing is, football essentially has three or four different. You got the Bill Walsh system, the West Coast. You got the Earnhardt Perkins system. You got the Air Coryell type digit type scheme. Like that's essentially it's three different holes that you could put it in. So I say all that to say they're essentially in that West Coast offense tree, so to speak. So I'm sure that there's ways that they could make it work and make that marriage correct. And that would be a good idea for Callahan to do that, like put him in the OC/assistant head coach role, because now you got somebody who's been there and done that from a planning perspective and everything else that it takes. Being the CEO is more than just X's and O's. So I think McCarthy could help him there.
Mike Vrabel to Dallas?
Hey, you saw my video of him wearing the cowboy hat before the Texans game, right?
It would be good. I'm sure he's got himself a couple pair of boots. He would
Yeah.
fit right in Dallas.
just
But last one from me, TD.
but
Now you bring
real
up
quick, can you see
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he and Jerry Jones, in the same room? I don't know.
That's what I told D-Mase earlier. I said,
Yeah.
if he was getting maybe frustrated with Amy Adams Strunk's involvement, can you imagine that relationship between he and old Jerry Jones? Woo!
Uh-uh.
That's a whole lot of alpha male in one room.
Right.
But last one from me, TD. Bring up Brian Callahan, and you talk about how Rand didn't share the vision of the organization. That's something that I felt that I wanted to hear. I don't need you to tell me what you want the coach's philosophy on fourth and three to be. I don't need the nitty gritty details, but portraying the vision I think is important so fans can trust him to execute the vision. But the other thing that we didn't hear from Rand or Amy Adams Strunk in her sit down with Mike Keith was final say of who ultimately will have control of this roster. And that opens up the possibility of the next head coach having final say, having more roster control. If it is Brian Callahan, how do you see that dynamic working out of final say and collaboration that Amy Adams Strunk believes so much in?
Yeah, that one puzzled me when she didn't say who or basically that Rand would have final say. And the reason why it puzzled me, when she said it, it didn't. But after the reports that Bill Belichick and Jim Harbaugh, I'm going to get it right, Jim Harbaugh wasn't on the radar, I said, well, why say that Rand's not going to, why not say he's going to have control? Because those are the two
Right.
guys out of all the candidates that I would say, okay, look, you know what, they could come in and they could demand that. But I don't think any of these other guys really can demand that. So for me, I do think that it should be the standard. Okay, the GM has the final say, but there is a true collaboration to the point like what Rand went over in regards to Elijah Mitchell being drafted, or how they bounce things off of different guys. And I know right now within the building, like every decision is very well vexed to where there are an extension of people that are involved in the decision-making process. But the bottom line is someone has to, the buck has to stop somewhere. And I think that's something that it has to stop with Rand Carthon. As the general manager, his job is to oversee the roster, and that should be the control that he has.
I'm with you, TD. I think that defined roles are important. Of course, you want to collaborate. Of course, you need different voices in the room, but it's important to have that one person that's making the shots or calling the shots, rather. Teron Davenport, TD, stay warm out there. Stay careful if you're out there on the roads. Appreciate you for joining us. Happy to have you back on board, and we'll chat next week.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Everybody, if you're driving, pump the brakes. Do not slam them because that will cause you to spin. That's coming from somebody from the Northeast, so drive carefully.
An expert in driving in the snow. TD, appreciate you. Yeah, absolutely. Stay safe. I was driving late last night home from the airport. Cars were spinning around. I saw several cars that got stuck on exit ramps. Be very, very careful. Don't get out on the roads if you don't have to.
Absolutely.
Appreciate TD for joining us. But coming up next, we'll take a quick football breather. We'll get into some hockey because the Predators had a massive, massive weekend this past weekend. Willy Donnock will join the show. We'll get a breakdown of what he saw from the Predators, what was encouraging from some of those young players, and what to expect tonight as the Predators take on the Vegas Golden Knights. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we are brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800
And how gratifying for your group to get that one done at home? I know that's been a point of emphasis the last couple of weeks.
But yeah, I think obviously was very gratifying. I think it was a reminder how hard it is to win, regardless in this league. And I think at home, it was good for us to realize what it takes to win at home, and the effort and the resilience and the battle. And they're not always going to be this hard, but they're harder than we've been playing. And tonight was a proof that if we stay with it, the result that we want is there.
All right, there you go. That was Predators head coach Andrew Burnett. The Predators had two difficult games, two very important games over the weekend, and they passed both of those tests. On Friday night, took down the Dallas Stars in Dallas 6-3. The Predators played their butts off in Dallas. It was a great game on Friday night. Quick turnaround back in Nashville, hosting the New York Islanders on Saturday. UC Saros back in net on Saturday night. They win that one 3-1. It was a pivotal weekend, an incredibly important weekend for the Nashville Predators to find themselves back into a playoff picture, to keep themselves in the playoff picture and not kind of get buried amongst some of the losses and some other teams that are trying to make a playoff push in the West. But a great weekend as far as the Nashville Predators are concerned. Now turning around on the road at Vegas, taking on the Golden Knights tonight. Puck drop at 5 o'clock. All your pregame coverage will start here at 4 o'clock on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. It's going to be a long stretch. You passed an important test this past weekend, beating the Stars on their home ice, not an easy place to play. Beating the Islanders, looking, you did what you needed to do in order to win that game. Didn't maybe look as dominant as they did on Friday night, but they did what they needed to do to win that game. Now another really tough test on a long West Coast road trip. Do we have Willy by any chance?
No signs of Mr. Donick yet.
No signs of Mr. Donick. So Willy Donick will join us shortly. D-Mase, I think one of the most impressive things that I saw, and maybe impressive isn't the right word, one of the things that gave me the most encouragement about this Predators team. We saw a great performance from Kevin Lankin on Friday night. We saw UC Saros feel like he got his groove back a little bit, maybe on Saturday night against the Islanders. But you got a lot of production from some of the young guys. That's something that we've been talking a lot about over the last few weeks, really the entirety of the season. At the beginning of the season, we said, okay, Barry Trotz brings in Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist because they're going to be able to set the culture and they're going to be able to kind of carry the team until these young guys kind of get into full form. And that's really what that top line has been doing. You have been carried by Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg really up until this point, but you wanted to start to see those young guys step up. You wanted to start to see those young guys start to at least carve their role on this team. You're going to have your ups and your downs, but you want to start to see young players show something. Show that, hey, I can be a leader on this team. I can be that Ryan O'Reilly moving forward. And we started to see that a little bit more over this past weekend.
Yeah, we did. They have been winners of 5 of their last 7. They hit that skid where it looked kind of bad for them prior to that. And I was one that brought up maybe, these young guys, have they hit sort of that rookie wall? And if they have, can they get themselves out of it? Well, subsequently after that, the last 7 games, like I said, they've won 5 of the last 7. They're still in that number 1 spot for the wild card. They got a chance right now to play Vegas, who's right now sitting second in the Pacific with 53 points. So they're in the playoff position. So this can do wonders for this team if they can pick up a victory tonight. And start to move on from there. So, but again, they can't sort of slip back into what they were doing a few weeks ago. They got to continue to push forward. These young guys got to continue to step up. And then your leaders, like you said, they got to continue to play the type or the brand of hockey that we've seen them play throughout the course of the year. But all of it depends on, as you know, and everybody here in Nashville knows, is UC Saros. Yeah. He won, the other night versus the Islanders. If he can get back to form, then I think this team can make a push and keep that first wild card spot. Willy
D, welcome to the program. Where I
Willy.
hope it's a little bit sunnier and warmer in Vegas than
Willie,
it
we
is
don't
here in
like you.
snowy Nashville.
We don't like you, Willie, because you looking out your window and you see nothing but probably green grass and trees. We look out of our window, we see trees, but we see all white everywhere.
Probably sees the water show at the Bellagio right now.
Exactly.
We're not far from there. We are not far from there. That's for sure. It is cold here in Vegas. The sun's out, but not quite what you guys are experiencing back home. So
I don't want to hear it.
Exactly, Willie.
Yeah. Yeah.
But D-Mase and I were just touching on this past weekend for the Predators, how it was going to be 2 tough tests and 2 important tests to keep yourself in that playoff picture. But Friday night in Dallas, that I stepped away feeling more impressed and more encouraged about this Predators team than I have in a long time. It was a great performance on Friday night, and then a quick back-to-back. You see UC Saros back in net, and he looked like more of a vintage UC Saros that the Predators, I think, need him to be.
Yeah, I think both of those guys, both of those points are good points. UC Saros a great statement game, I thought, on Saturday in the back-to-back. He's now 4-0 in the back half of back-to-back, so that has been a good slot for him. And Kevin Lankinen played a second very good game against Dallas. The most impressive part about the Dallas win was how they did it. If you look at the way they just sort of outplayed Dallas, if you look at all the underlying numbers, heavily favored the Predators, 38-22 in the shots, more scoring chances, led throughout. After kind of a slow start, first 10 minutes or so, they had to defend very well. But after that, it was really all Predators, and Dallas was playing catch up the whole time. That's not easy to do down there. So that, you keep going back and forth. And one of the things that Barry Trotz said on Jared's show on Friday afternoon before the back-to-back wins, when he was asked a lot of the tough questions, what about the young guys? How's UC Saros going to get out of this slump? Things like that. He said, I really believe that if you look at what we've done as a team in the first half of the season, without great play from UC Saros and without really great play from all of the youngsters combined, there's really a lot of room to grow in the second half. I think there's cause for optimism there.
And that was one thing that I shared with D-Mase that gave me probably the most optimism, is the thing that we've been saying for the last few weeks, last few months, of you need to start getting more production from the young guys. That sure, Ryan O'Reilly and Philip Forsberg and Gus Nyquist, they can carry you for so long. But when you're talking about the long term, when you're talking about the big picture Predators, which I think that's Barry Trotz's vision. It's not just about this week and this month. It's about what's happening in the next 3 to 5 years, that you need to start seeing some breakouts from those young guys. And you look at the game on Saturday, Luke Evangelista scores, Yusuf Parsonen scores, Philip Tomasino with an assist. You're seeing production from the young guys, and really were carried for the most part by the young guys against the Islanders. I liked to see that. You needed that breakthrough.
Yes, that was so important. And those 3 guys are the youngest 3 on the team for sure, all 22 and under. So you'd like to think that they're still learning and there's still a lot of room for improvement there. And the double-edged sword, of course, is you've leaned so heavily on that top line, and those guys have been great. But, take for example, today when they play Vegas. Vegas is the defending Stanley Cup champion. They're a great team. But they have some injuries right now. And knock on wood, Nashville has had some decent fortune so far. It's not been perfect or anything like that, but they've had, for the most part, a healthy team, give or take a couple of guys. And so that's the thing that you have to be, knowing if you're Barry Trotz, is can you go through a stretch like Vegas is going through right now and survive without some top guys? They're going to be without Jack Eichel this afternoon, on top of a couple other guys. So Dallas is playing without Miro Heiskanen right now. That is, logically, the Predators are going to have to deal with some of that in the second half for sure. And that's where the depth, that's where that growth has to come in. That's where, UC Saros playing the way he's capable over the second half can make up for that. And I think if you heard Barry Trotz, he's very excited about the youth coming up through. Tanner Molendijk, I noticed now, is back from his injury. He scored a couple goals. I don't know if he's going to play any part in this season at all, but some of the guys in Milwaukee, I think he referenced, that could give them a lift here and there. Igor Afanasyev is having a career year and he's old enough, I think, that he's chomping at the bit for a chance. And so, if you were to have, you start looking at these things. Do you have some depth waiting for you if you need to stem the tide a little bit? But in the meantime, try to make some hay while you've got the healthy lineup, and that's probably the theme this afternoon. You're going to have a really hungry team in Vegas that's trying to get right and hang in there. So it's not going to be easy by any stretch. But look, if you told me before the season you get a chance to play at Vegas with them a little down in injuries, this is an opportunity for them.
And it's a great opportunity for them. And looking at this road stretch, it's not an easy road stretch really by any means. You have the Golden Knights tonight, and then you play LA, and then you have Arizona later on in the week. 3 important games and 3 tough games. And Arizona is a game that you need to win. But how important is tonight to kind of kick off the road trip on the right foot?
I think you hit on it. Andrew Burnett said this after the game on Saturday night. He said, if you take a look, this is, and the reference he used was golf. He said, this is that time of the year where everybody's kind of looking at it and saying, okay, you've got that big all-star break. You've got the bye week. Everybody's got their plans. They're going to take a little vacation with the family. They're going to get away from it, which is, what the Players Association has decided to do. Like, no other sport takes that kind of break in the middle of the season. And it really does get everybody away, and you can recharge the body a little bit, but you can lose a little rhythm. And so Andrew Burnett says, look, you can separate right here. You can have some teams that are looking a little too forward to the break and they fall off. And then if you can stay focused and play good hockey from now until the break, that's a really important stretch. And he said, like, it's like a golfer that, works his way through the qualifying rounds and gets into Saturday and Sunday, and you have a chance to play for something. But you don't want to be packing your bags on Friday and miss the cut. So the game on Saturday against Arizona is a very, very big game. That's a bubble team that has probably overachieved a little bit. That already has beaten Nashville one time. They're much better than they were last year, and they're very tough in that little building that they play in there, that college rink. It's different than any other rink in the league. And obviously LA coming up too is a very good team that I think has championship aspirations. So it is a tough schedule, I think, between now and the All-Star break.
A different rink because it is in fact a college rink. But I mean, they packed that place out. What seats 2,000, 2,500 people? Can pack it out. Gets loud in there.
It's different. Like if you picture the Ford Ice Center, it's not a whole lot bigger than the Ford Ice Center. It's nicer. It's like a nicer version of it. Think Curb Event Center kind of size.
Yeah.
They are really in a transition right now. That Arizona team, they're trying to figure out what's next. They're trying to get their and the league has been so patient for them. And I don't know where they're going to be playing 5 years from now. But in the meantime, that's where it is. And their guys have kind of accepted the challenge. But of course, first things first, you got the defending champs tonight. And we know what atmosphere is going to be in that building. They do it to excess.
That's a great environment.
Everything oh my God, it's crazy.
Do we know who's in net tonight?
We have not talked to Andrew Burnett yet.
Okay.
I am guessing it'll be UC Saros, but that's just a guess on my part. I do think, even though there's no back-to-backs, you will see Kevin Lankinen in one of these games, at least, on the trip, I would think.
All right, again, Predators in action tonight on the road, taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. Puck drop at 5 o'clock. We'll have your pregame coverage here at 4 p.m. Willie D, good luck out there. Maybe going to hit the slots tonight?
Well, we're moving on to L.A. after this game.
Probably a smart decision on the Predators' part.
The slot machines are not my thing. They are not my friend. I have never had success in that area there. But it was fun last night, milling around and watching the football games. So many people decked out.
Sure.
And money on the games and then heading to the slide. It's typical Vegas for sure.
Speaking of Vegas, we'll make our picks for Steelers, Bills, and Eagles, Bucks coming up next. Willie D, appreciate you. Have a good call tonight.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Enjoy, Willie.
Appreciate it. All right, Caroline, Willy, D-Mase will preview the games of the day coming up next. Tune into 1025 The Game this Wednesday night for Vanderbilt men's basketball. The Commodores take on Auburn at home. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. with pregame beginning at 7:30. Coverage is also available on the 1025 The Game app, broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round.
All right, let's tell you about Loan Pronto while I've got your attention here from Vegas. Loan Pronto here in 2024, they know that the rates are down and it's a great time to strike. And if you got stuck with an interest rate that you didn't like in the last year or so when the rates were up, they want you to know that very quickly they could have you with APRs fixed in the fives. So if you got stuck something higher than that, 7 or 8%, they can get this fast switch to something that's going to get your monthly budget in a much better spot. And that's every month you're going to be saving hundreds of dollars. So if you're buying a new home, that now that the rates have come down, Loan Pronto can and will beat anyone else's rate. No closing costs. Or maybe you just need some cash to pay off all the credit cards. And we've talked a lot about the Express Equity line of credit. So all of these things are under the umbrella of Loan Pronto. You just call them at 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval. All right, let's talk. Take it to the bank. I'm 2 for 3 so far, and I am all in on the Steelers to cover the spread in snowy Buffalo here. And if so, I'm making a comeback in our fun Take It to the Bank segment that we do every Friday, thanks to our friends at F&M Bank. They are a proud sponsor of our show. We're so glad to have them with us. And you've heard me talking about them a lot, all the ways they help you out. Well, how about to the business owners out there? If you own your own business, you know it's like having another member of your family. You got to take the time to have the success. It takes money and attention. You need the right tools to succeed and help it grow. F&M Bank will treat your business like family, no matter what your business goals. You'll reach them easier when you have the banking relationship that supports you, tools to conveniently manage your money coming in and going out, and the expertise to make your business better. Bank your business at F&M Bank. Decisions made locally from a bank where your business means more to them. So stop by one of their 20 convenient locations. Just locate it by going to myfmbank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game and the Game Nashville app. We had a great wild card weekend this past weekend, but the fun is not over yet. We've got Steelers and Bills kicking off here in just shy of 2 hours. We've got Eagles and Bucks tonight. No AJ Brown for the Eagles tonight, but D-Mase, let's start with the Steelers and the Bills. Your official pick, your official prediction for one of the snowier games that we've probably ever experienced in the NFL. I mean, I've seen that Buffalo is completely coated in snow.
Yeah, unfortunately for Buffalo, I'm sure they won't have as many fans there as they would normally on a playoff game. And then Pittsburgh fans, if you wasn't there already, then you may not be able to get to the game. I just think Buffalo has it going right now. I think they figured out their run game. They're starting to run the ball a little bit more, a little bit better. And it seems like Josh Allen, he seems to be locked in. It's hard for me to bet against Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin, but I'm going to go against Pittsburgh this one time. I think Buffalo playing at home. Not that the weather will be any factor to either one of the teams. I think because both of them play in this type of weather. I just think right now Buffalo is the more complete team, even though Pittsburgh is playing a lot better than they did in the beginning of the year. But I just think being at home benefits the Buffalo Bills. If this was in Pittsburgh, I would be picking Pittsburgh, but it's in Buffalo, so I'm going with the Bills.
I know both of these teams play in the snow a lot, but this is a different kind of snow. And when I look at this game, it just comes down to who do I trust more running the football? Buffalo has, and I think, evolved the run game a good bit, but I think the Steelers are going to win this game. This spread is 10. Buffalo is favored by 10. I think that is insane. I would take the Steelers to cover the spread. And I truly can never trust Josh Allen in the playoffs. It's like the Cowboys. Can't trust you in the playoffs.
Josh Allen. I told y'all that. But it seems to now that Cook is running the ball effectively, it seems that McDermott would tend to lean on the running game and take some of the pressure off of Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Because Josh is a good quarterback. He's probably, to me, that he's the top of that second tier or the bottom of the first tier. But you can't. Him trying to win football games in the playoffs, I think if you allow him to do that, then I think you may, see yourself, throwing more interceptions than not. We got to remember last year, he threw 3 or 4 interceptions and kept Miami in that game when Miami had no reason to be in that game.
Right.
But because of Josh Allen, he kept him in the game with his interceptions.
Quickly, D-Mase, we got Eagles and Bucks tonight as well. Eagles are only a 3-point favorite. No A.J. Brown tonight. I'm going to take the Eagles to win. But my question for you, is Nick Sirianni on the hot seat if the Eagles don't win this game?
No, I don't think he is. I think he will retain his job. I don't think there's no A.J. Brown tonight. They've had injuries throughout that roster. But I'm picking the Bucks. With no A.J. Brown, I'm picking the Bucks and that defense. And Baker Mayfield has a resurgence. He has a new lease on life, and he's playing outstanding. So I'm picking those Bucks. He and Evans, 1-2 combination. I see Evans going over 120 yards tonight.
Baker's going to cook. I like it. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman & Company. It's up next.
Be love and love on your people. Peace.